Adam Farris, how are you, man?
Man, I'm good. I'm good.
Second
Happy
time on the
Wednesday.
podcast. So, for folks that didn't catch the first one, let people know who you are, what you do, and where they can find you.
Yes. Adam Farris, writer, biblical researcher. I'm just a big nerd, man. I researched the Bible ridiculous. 3 years ago my life just changed completely. It was a 180. For all intents and purposes, I was just a normal distribution center manager. I had a faith background, and that's how I was able to figure out what was happening. But my life got turned, and I gave into God's will, and I don't want that to sound the wrong way because it's an awesome thing, but I basically said, I need your help in a really hard time in my life. And he was like, yo, I got some plans. And it's been so crazy, so fun of just finding this wild stuff and writing about it. I've never really thought of myself as a writer, but me and my wife laughed about that the other morning and was like, "Shit, your life's crazy, right?" It was like, yeah, I was just a manager, and that's all I wanted was just to continue growing in the career world. Now, I obviously I look at that differently, the career world and Nephilim and the deception and the government and stuff. So yeah, I eadamferris.substack.com is where the bulk of my writing started. I did do the book Five Stones, which we talked about. I've recently started
Right
doing
here,
more.
folks. Here's what it looks like.
That's her.
Go get yourself a
That's her.
copy.
Still holler at me. I got plenty of copies. I've been super focused on my YouTube page and hidden content there, and doing some AI videos. Because that in theory is what I feel like this direction I'm on is, just to give better visuals, research, figure out who they are, why they are, and just share. And that's been really cool with the AI thing. I know it's controversial, whatever, but
Of course, right?
you know what I mean? But dude, to be able to, like, I did the King's Highway video, and to be able to, in my opinion, put Og the way he actually looks, and Sion and the Amorites, that was really, really cool. So, I mean, that's me in a nutshell. My life is absolutely focused on researching and sharing the crazy supernatural stuff in the Bible.
Yeah, awesome. So, what do you think about the AI? Not to go down a rabbit hole, but
Sure.
I, especially as an artist or a person that does, stuff, I want your opinion on
Yeah. So
using AI. And, some people think it's the fallen or Nephilim or whatever,
yeah,
just what's
it
your
is.
opinion?
It is. It is weird. I will say that it is weird technology to be able to do this stuff. Like the King's Highway. What I did was I tried to do it as manual as possible. I'm one of them. I'm a real dude. I don't want to ever be called anything else. So
Yeah,
I
right.
actually wrote it, and I used Image Generator to do my storyboard, and then I used some other program to manipulate those videos, and then I did the voiceover, and I actually made the music for it because I used to do music back in the day. So it was like as manual as possible because I ain't no punk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I got you.
But my opinion on it, um, it's complex. So for me, I don't have Hollywood budget, and I really respect Robert Rodriguez. His the way he goes about filming and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't got 7 grand. That's his story, and that's how he
Yeah,
started. And
right.
even if, and I don't want to come off as like oh, excuses. Even if I had 7 grand, Og needs to be seen the way he is. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's Lord of the Rings Hollywood budget. So I actually talked to my wife, and I was like, "Look, I want to do this. This is a way that I can do it, but it's funky right now. And my wife's like, do you ever care about people's opinions? And I'm like, yep, check.
Yeah, right.
So that on one sense, I look at it like that, as it is a tool for us to be able to share the word. And any of those tools got to be a good thing.
Yeah,
Um, Now, of course, everything can be used the wrong way.
of course.
And and I think that that would really come down to the person and the intent, not the technology.
Agreed.
Right? Like the first person that made the sword was probably like, "Oh, dude, should we do this?" And then it goes down to the arrow and the gun and the da da da. And there was probably
Yeah,
always somebody like, "Oh, can this, of course it could be taken the wrong way."
of course.
So, in a long answer, that's kind of how I am about AI. I'm not shying away from it because it's helped me share the word, and
Yeah,
that's
agreed.
you know
I
that.
I think it's how you use it, right? I'm not asking it to like direct me in life because that's just weird. It's not a person, and you can't treat it as such. I don't like some people talk to it like it's a person, and no, it's not. It's a tool, right? And you can't take it at face value. That's my opinion.
Mhm,
I feel like, if you have it, I write a lot and I have, um, sometimes I put it in and let it, you know, tighten things up
mhm.
from time to time, or at least give me another take. Um, so that's how I look at it. And I obviously use it for art because I am not an artist, but if I ask it to create art for me, you
Yeah,
know,
having that ability, it is really weird. It's a really weird time because all of this stuff does coincide with the end times and Revelation. Like it
so
really does. So it's kind of scary. Um, it's really weird to keep this thing going with like Elon Musk. Was Elon at first seemed, and this is an opinion thing. Like first he seemed all right, and then it was kind of weird, and then he did the Neuralink.
yep.
So he was
Yeah.
straight up on my
It's like,
radar. And
what
I'm
the heck? Yeah.
yes, and I'm like, dude, okay. But then he ties in with Trump and Doge and does this incredibly great stuff. And again, I'm a realist, man. That savings and stuff, you can't argue that. How we're being manipulated and taken advantage of. Like taxes, dude, you're telling me that there's record of millions and millions of tax dollars not being used on us? That's
Trillions.
unacceptable.
Trillions of
Yeah,
dollars.
that's unacceptable. I don't care what it was on. That's unacceptable. That was our money. We worked for that, man.
Yeah. That is our money. So,
So then Elon seemed like, dude, this is going to be an all right thing. But now you look at Elon. I don't know if you've seen what's been going on with him here lately, and it's like that whole tech thing and intent. Going back to intent,
yeah.
he may not be a really really good guy. It
I
may
mean,
be.
it's one of those things like we'll see, but I also look at it like him and his company and whatnot, their Doge came together and uncovered a whole bunch of stuff. And then our lawmakers have refused to execute on it. So
Hmm?
it's kind of like I look at it that way as like, yep, doesn't surprise me at all. They're just showing their true colors. Like they don't actually care about what they're spending the money on or what they're using the funds for and whatnot. And you know, I, I just it makes me rely less and less on you know or trust any of these folks any more at all. Not
Well,
that I had a lot to go with in the first place, but
exactly.
it's just, it just shows, it shows you exactly what their priorities are at, where they're at.
Mhm.
And it's not
Well,
with with the American people at all. So,
no, and all that came
and that's
out,
both
and
sides, frankly.
yeah, absolutely. You're right, man. I can't stand. Well, I'm not even gonna go down that road, but I can't stand the two-party system. If that isn't a facade, and we can't
Yeah.
see through that, oh well, now we got two. Yeah, we're one party. But anyways, um, all of the Doge stuff and the U.S. aid, Mike
Yeah.
Benz. I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Benz,
Yeah.
Ian Carroll. These dude. So
Yeah. Mike
all that
Benz was
came
just
out.
on Julian.
Yeah, with Dorsey.
Dorsey's podcast and
Yeah.
just drop
Yo,
bombs, right? So
Mike Benz, hats off to you, brother, dude. So
but
all
see
that,
what then I love is people turn around, even people in our people in our niche, right? Will turn around and be like, he's a fed, he's a fed. I love it. It's like same with Ian Carroll. You know, I I just watch it and I take it all in, and
you know what I'm saying?
we don't know
That,
anything, bro, is what it comes down to. I
yeah,
really, but you have to use discernment, right? And that comes from
yes.
somewhere. So,
Well, all of that for me and my own line came out when I was really digging into Judges and the king thing and how far the Nephilim goes and God's opinion on government. When all of this starts coming down, so that's when it like really clicked for me. Was like,
well,
well,
it's kind of
that's
funny. We just had the No Kings protests, right? So I'm just saying, you and judges, man, you got some
yeah.
stuff. You got some stuff to go over.
Oh my gosh. So, yes. So, and this will, and again, we'll bounce back and forth with David's Mighty Men and Judges because it's all craziness. But where I'm at now, Genesis 6, 1 through 4, is literally, it is how I look at it, is just a heads up of humanity has changed. And that's kind of really it. Other books take it in a different direction and they paint and there's always intent behind things. So that's the hard part about other books, non-canonical. But right now, the mass opinion with like giants is like mythology. They're all horrible, blood sucking, nasty, no, that wasn't the case. You look at humans now, like you got Jeffrey Dahmer. That doesn't mean that every human's a cannibal.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm uncovering is it was literally just telling us that at way early on, something got in the human gene pool and it changed it. And it says it, the men of renown, the men of old. And what that means is all of these crazy stories that are being written all over the world, even by us, that's where all of these crazy people come from. I say crazy, but it's
Yeah.
giants and hybrids
Right.
and,
Right. Right.
and all that stuff. So I'll give you a quick example of Judges with Jephthah the Gileadite. And this is going to back up the Genesis 6 thing and help us really get into it. So the idea with Judges is Israel Israel was trying to get their thing and do the promised land and get to normal and all that stuff. So God was appointing judges, and it's technically shofetim is the Hebrew word, and it's not judge necessarily because really none of them actually do any judging, right? And no, all the stories are involving battle, so it's kind of like a ruler judge, somebody that to keep the people safe, basically.
Yeah.
But I believe that means is these are just special beings that God was using to keep his people safe, because he was adamant, you don't need a king. I'm your king. If you get a king, you're going to be governed like all these other nations. Look at how the other nations were being governed by Nephilim kings, and we know that from Ezekiel 28 and Daniel 10. But then look at their gods, Shamash, Baal. They were
Oh yeah.
all calling for horrible things. They weren't be like, yo, let's hang out. No, it was like pass your children through the flame, and
Yeah.
and you know, like orgy sacrifice, crazy hedonistic, you know. So it's like
Absolutely.
you don't want this. Look what they're doing to their people.
Right.
So Genesis 6 tells us that sons of God came down and he took wives from of human women, and that's where giants come from. And it's theoretically because angels are big, God's big. That's just what's going on there, and there's genes, and that's what got mixed with the human women.
Right.
So Jephthah the Gileadite, it says that he was a mighty man of valor. Now in Hebrew, that is a Gibor Hashavel for Gibborim. He was a man of chivalry. So just because they are a Gibberim doesn't mean that they were a violent offender. It just means that they were big or they come from Nephilim blood. And that's why he was a Gibor HaShavil, meaning he was a good giant, a man of valor. Now, his mother, it says he was the son of a harlot, and Gilead begat Jephthah. Now, Gilead is one of the lands from the Promised Land. And you track that, that's a lot of bad people. And David had a few Gileadites as his mighty men too. So that just another backing of warrior type people.
Yeah.
Now, it does not actually say harlot. In Hebrew, it's Zona. Zona refers to a woman who has had sexual relations with someone she is prohibited from marrying, even if she is not a prostitute. Doesn't that sound like Genesis 6?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's another
It
backing,
absolutely could be, right?
right?
Yeah.
So he's a Gibor HaShavil. He's a mighty man of valor. His mother had relations with somebody you're not supposed to have. And then the men of Gilead. So he, in his story, he's not initially looked at as like, he's looked at as a weirdo and outcast because his father's not normal. But then when during that story, all of the battle, the men go to him and they say, "Will you be our captain?" And he's like, "Well, I thought y'all hated me, man. What do y'all want me for?" Read into that. Why did they want that? Because he was Gibor HaShavil. He
Yeah.
was a big boy. And that's just one little example from the judges, right? Now, Gideon, this is a really crazy one too, because this has a little bit to do with some dogmen stuff. So we know the story about Gideon. Gideon did the horns, Jericho, and knocked the walls down and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, story of Gideon. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, "The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor." Reoccurring theme there.
Yeah.
Now, he is the son of Joash, the Abiezrite. Now, they are from Orpha, and Orpha is one of the conquered lands in the Promised Land. So there's two little pieces right there, right?
Right.
So the story of Gideon, God comes to him and says, "Hey, I need you to do this stuff, blah." And he's like, "I think I know what you're saying. Can you show me a sign?" And then you remember, he gets the opposite of the sign.
Yeah.
And then so after that second sign, God's like, "I tell you what, I'm testing you now." So he gets a huge group of men and they go down to the water. And it says, "So he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, Everyone that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt set by himself." So the 300 men, and I've heard the story, he took 300 men, and it was like, dude, that's like Spartan,
Yeah, that's like Thermopylae.
right? But those 300 men specifically, when they brought them to the river, without any compelling, they jumped in and started lapping water up like a dog. And God's like, "That's your dudes. That's your army right there." Gideon's like, "Dude, for real?" He's like, "No, no, no. I'm gonna be with you, just like you tested me. I'm testing you." Right now,
Yeah.
we know,
Right.
and we know Caleb and Kenaz. Oh, and Othniel. I'm gonna tie this in. So Caleb is the first inkling of dogmen beyond this whole lapping of the dog thing, a lapping of the water. Because Caleb does mean dog / unsophisticated servant. So if you look at a dog, man's best friend,
Yeah.
unsophisticated servant kind of thing.
Huh.
But Caleb is the brother of Kenaz, and Kenaz's son, Othniel, was the first judge of Israel. Othniel means violent lion of God. Now, Othniel and Kenaz are Kenizzites, because there's Kenizzites also. And when Abram, way back in the day, was promised, "Hey, you get into the promised land, you're going to be over Goy Gadol's, nations of great size." These are the people that got to go. Kenizzites is one of those tribes, meaning hunter of men.
Yeah.
So Othniel was one of the first judges, and he comes from that whole like dogman, lionman thing.
Yeah, man.
So, and Gideon, really quick, like after that, the whole lapping, the water and all that stuff. So in Judges 8:7-8, it says that he beat down the tower of Penuel. Now, with not taking these stories properly, like we talked about last time, you have to incorporate the supernatural. You have to,
Yeah.
because it does not say that Gideon and 300 men beat down the tower. It doesn't say that, and it would have, right? There's plenty of stories where it says these guys went in and they did this and blah. So Gideon, the Gibor HaShavil, beat down a tower himself and slew all the men of the city. And the only other examples that we have similar to that are Joab from the sons of Zariah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
And there's a few other those. So if you track those, I think it's like, and Doeg the Edomite, and we'll get to that, but in the David story, he slew a whole city himself, and he was a Gibberim.
Yeah. And he wasn't necessarily a good guy, was he? He was not a good guy.
He was Saul's bodyguard. He was a bad dude.
Yeah.
And
Doeg, right? Doeg,
yes.
Doeg,
Yeah, I don't know if it's Doeg,
Yeah,
Doeg,
it's something, but
yeah.
yeah, it's that guy.
He was, and that goes back to this whole thing of like, just because it was Gibberim doesn't mean they were bad. It just means
Right.
that was in their DNA.
Yeah.
Because as David was accruing his good mighty men, his good Gibberim, Saul had Doeg the Edomite, and they were following David, and they went to the town of Nob, and he decimated the whole city himself. So that's another example of one guy doing it himself, and if you track it, it all comes from the same place.
So
But, and I'm gonna say this one part too,
go
and
ahead.
then I'm done with Gideon. But then in Judges 8:18, Gideon's talking to somebody else. This is another great example. Then he said unto Zebah and Zalmunna, what manner of men were they whom you slew? And they answered him, as thou art, so were they. Each one resembled the children of a king.
Yeah.
So Nephilim king thing. Why would he resemble the child of a king? That's a very specific. He didn't have a cape or nothing.
Yeah, right. Huh. Yeah, man, it gets your brain spinning hardcore. Like, so it also, this is something that I've, and we talked about this last time, and it's something I just try and wrap my head around, because I'm of the opinion that so many of these, and I'll call them entities, I won't take the supernatural out of it, right? Or hybrids, or whatever you want to call them. They say, basically, the way that it's put forth by so many people, scholars, biblical experts that we hear from in all these podcasts, that at the end of the day, if you have anything to do with the Nephilim, you're damned.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if that's true.
It's not.
I don't think so, but like, I keep getting browbeaten a little bit that yes, it is. Yes, it does. But I'm like, so how far down the line do you have to go? You know what I mean? Like, when do you, even if you're more human than Nephilim, they talk about the blood, it's the blood, right? But if you have Jesus, and regardless, if they believe in Jesus as their Lord and Savior, are they beyond redemption? And I don't think they are. I think that's based on how they live their lives. And just like us, same with us. If we don't have Jesus in our heart, then it's pretty explicit what happens, right? So with that being said, I can't find any place, and I don't know if I'm right, but I'm not a biblical scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't ever state that they're damned forever. Um, you know, and there's a lot of evidence to the contrary, actually.
Yes, and that's exactly what I was saying earlier. And I have my opinions on why that narrative is being pushed, and I'll get into that. But um, again, I'm rethinking the Genesis 6 thing, and it's not as much of a warning as I initially thought it was. I
Yeah.
think it was just literally, this is where all those giants and the hybrids came from. They're here. They are those stories that you're hearing. This is where it all came from. Because like, um, and I'll say this, and then I'll get into like a super heavy example. But Isaiah 34:14 mentions the Sair in the wild catch was Ivim, if I'm pronouncing it right, in a Lilith spirit. And the way it references them is that that'll be what's left over after Edom has been demolished. So, and I could be wrong, whatever, but the way I take that is they're non-threats, right? It was like this, that'll be what's left over, because you were ridding of all the bad. Well, why didn't you get rid of them too? Because it was just nothing. It was just an entity, right? It was just a Sair. It literally was just a half man, half goat, and whatever he does in here is what defines him, you know. And
Yeah.
my reasoning in thinking that is because that's kind of like, I think that's how it all went down. We kind of touched base on that last time, was that Sair and those linemen and those dogmen and all this, they went other places and they started their own thing. And that's where we get the differences in religions and the difference in the story of how it happened. So you literally, it's just a choice that they made of, you know, I'm going to do this. And they tell people and it's a lie and it goes from there. But then you look at like the Amorites. Amorites are known giants, way it is. At the beginning, they had not gotten, they were good. It says that they had not realized the evil yet. So, but they were good, and Abram partnered up with some Amorites. But then they got to be bad, and they were really bad, and then they had to be rid. Well, in Joshua, there's a tribe of Amorites called the Gibeonites, and they are remnants of Amorites. They are Gibberim. It is confirmed that all of the men thereof were Gibberim, so they're giants as well. And they come from Amorite blood, if you will. How that's the best way to say it. So their story starts. Um, Israel's already. This is in Joshua, so all the giants are getting the butt kicked. Everybody.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
word's gotten out that these are not people you want to mess with. So in the story, they close themselves and they kind of do a disguise and they trick Israel into a peace settlement. And because they tricked them, they ended up getting lifetime tributary to the temple was their punishment. So they didn't have to be killed, right? It wasn't like, oh, you're horrible, you tricked us, you're liars, you got to go. They were, and tributaries is forced labor. It's different from slavery and stuff like that. So you're basically just the worker bee for the temple for life. We're going to spare your life, but for life you're dedicated to the temple.
You're a
Specifically,
stone carrier.
well, I was getting ready to go into that. They were specifically woodcutters and water carriers
Mm.
for the temple, for life, woodcutters and water carriers. Well, you familiar with Solomon's molten sea?
Yeah.
That big, big, gigantic thing that he made? Well,
Yes.
it's speculated that the Gibeonites, being lifelong tributaries, were in charge of filling that 10 to 12 to 15-foot tall chalice. So were they bad if they're part of the temple? You know what I mean? And then, of
Yeah.
course, and we did the examples last time of Obed Edom and Ornan that they're actually in. So it is, again, I'm rethinking Gen 6. Just because they were big or they weren't all the way human doesn't mean that they were horrible. It's just certain tribes were. And, again, to go into that, if you track those tribes, who was their god? Who were their being, who was the king? I think that was like a whole nother thing going on in the background. Was that's, we know what the Nephilim have been up to. We know it, right? And we already talked
Right.
about that. So of course they're going to use the resources of the land too. So, in David's story, he had 600 Gittites join with him. Well, Goliath is a Gittite. So there's a
Yeah.
whole nother tribe in it. And they were like insistent, like, no, we're with you. We don't like what everyone else is doing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't agree with the whole, oh, it's bad and it's horrible. And I literally just saw something right before we got on here, dude. You know how doom scrolling goes and
Yeah.
algorithms. And somebody was on Facebook, and I forget her name. It was Kim something. Looked like a writer. You know how they put stuff on there for you. And she was doing this thing. It was pictures of giants like a vampire biting, and it was like a horrible. It's like, where's your evidence for that?
Yeah.
You know, non-canonical. Okay, well, we can't. Well,
Yeah.
we
I mean,
standing
where
on
they
that.
talk about all of a sudden, they had eaten all the rest of the food. And so then they started eating people. Right.
Oh,
But
I'm
where
sure
does that come from?
there might have been a few of them doing that.
Of
I agree
course.
with that.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, dude.
So I'm not going to derail us. I'm going to stay in the same sphere, but we're coming
Mm-hmm.
into modern day now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big Sasquatch
Mm-hmm.
uh, researcher, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. But, it's this whole Eliud idea, right? Which are just the offspring of Nephilim, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that uh, this is what possibly Bigfoot, Sasquatch is, right? Well, I just saw this YouTube video, and these are the things that kind of go off the rails a little bit, but then it comes back, and the fact that I'm going to bring it up, but whatever. This woman claims that she was uh, assaulted by and that's what I'm going to say. It's sexually assaulted by a
I
Bigfoot.
say.
She doesn't remember it, right? Because of whatever, but there's no other real good explanation, right? Other than, I mean, it could have been another person in the woods, but it was just like there's some circumstantial evidence that comes into play that it was a Bigfoot, considering the she she became pregnant and then had a child that was very large, kind of hairy. You know what I mean? Had to
Mm-hmm.
get electrolysis, and this is all alleged. Had to
Sure,
get
sure.
electrolysis and uh, you know, pass as a human. I mean, not like you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and so then this person, the offspring, the daughter of Bigfoot, the daughter of Sasquatch, and this woman now also says, like, someone's talking to her and she's giving her statement and saying that she is able to telepathically talk with other members of the clan, right? And
Sure.
let's call it that.
Hive mind kind of thing.
The tribe, right? Sort of. Even at distance, but not like everybody, but at distance. And she's talking with her, what you would call in human terms, an uncle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, for me, it kind of goes off the rails. I mean, not that I don't know what to think of the other stuff too. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
but crazier things in my brain, I think are happening, right? But anyway, it's just as believable as any other story,
Mm-hmm.
right? At this point.
Yeah, yeah.
But then what happens is I see the deception creep in. So it makes me feel like, ooh, are these things are they evil or are they good? Because the deception part of this goes is that we were placed on this planet from other, it fits right into the narrative that's going on now with aliens
Yeah.
and the deception, as L.A. Marzulli would call it, the great deception of we're your cosmic brothers and sisters and we're here to help, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of brought me to that place is that allegedly there was a battle between different clans or different tribes, one of which was her father's clan, one of which was her uncle's clan, and they ended up all killing each other. But the one clan won and then killed the rest of the others. That's the way they did business, right? So her father, her Sasquatch father, and her half brother, and yada, 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 chose death, right? But it seems as though it's hard to say who's good and who's bad, but they were on opposing sides of this, right? So I'm rambling at this point, but this is the same type of battle and the cosmic stuff that's happening supernaturally, physically, all of it across the whole Bible. And even in the modern day with some of these stories, like you can't make a lot of this stuff up. I mean, you can, but then if you start going down that rabbit hole, things start popping up that you're like, oh my God, there's literally possible hybrids walking around with us today that would be part of this giant Nephilim, Gibberine, Raphaim, all the Eames, all the giants, right?
Yeah.
That still live technically in our blood to this day. Not even talking about the royal stuff and the kings, just in everyday people, right? So it just twisted me up yesterday. So you brought up what happened to you. This happened to me yesterday. So,
and for me on those, and it's kind of like the whistleblowers with the UAP.
Yeah.
If it happened, it happened. And like, if you have like you can tell when it's an actual fire or when somebody's yelling, "Hey, there's a fire."
Usually, right?
Right? Theoretically. And that's kind of the
theory.
way I look at things. It's like every UAP whistleblower, all of them say the same thing. I can't talk about this, but I can talk about this. You ain't a whistleblower then, homie. Because if we're
Yeah,
under
like
threat,
bring it all. Bring the disclosure. Like what's going on?
straight
Talk
up.
about this or that. Well, why? Why can't you? Oh, I signed a piece of paper. Dude, again, not a whistleblower.
Yeah, well, then it's not that serious. If you signed a paper to not talk about this and this, but you can talk about this.
I mean, you're going in
And
front of Congress. Like you've already gone across the line.
dude, to hit
Right?
podcasts and get on there and just talk about, oh man, and I know some stuff, but I can't talk about. Well, then if we're under attack, they should take you out first because you didn't give us no heads up. Like that's bull. Um, but like the Bigfoot and surviving and stuff, um, I personally see like we know how this whole thing's going to end. And in Revelation, it says specifically like what'll be left and how it's going to look, and it
Yeah.
covers all that. I don't see how all of that can happen like a couple days beforehand. You know what I mean?
No, right. Yeah.
This
Right.
is a long game. And yes, we talked about the flood too. The flood was a washing. It was an easy restart. If God wanted everything to die, everything would have died. That would have been the command.
Right.
So I 1,000% believe that not just Bigfoots, giants, this lion men, all of that.
Remnant populations.
Yes, absolutely. And if it has human traits, then it can replicate, right? Because I think that's the technical thing with the Nephilim and the angels, because they had to take human forms to be able to replicate,
Right.
right? So if you got that part in you, well, then you can do that. So yeah, absolutely. All of that stuff too. If you think about, the Great Deception, as you mentioned, um, that's a big army. That's a very complex, diverse army being used for different things in different places. You know what I'm
Absolutely. I
saying?
mean, they talk about the Therion and different things like that, and it's not just men. It's also the beasts, right?
hmm And did you see that lady that went on, and she's been hitting the grounds now talking about uncovering a bunch of spending, and there was 21 trillion used on underground this
Yeah,
and that.
I'm putting together. I'm doing a ton of research and I'm going to do an episode on that for sure.
Good.
I've got that, but what I've done is I've taken, not to hijack this, but I've taken a whole bunch of the other whistleblowers too, not just UAP or whatever, whistleblowers across the board from like the 50s on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm connecting the dots. I'm using ChatGPT as a tool. I'm plugging in the information that I want analyzed, and guess what? It's showing me where the congruencies are between these claims, and it
Mm-hmm.
notches down to like 3 different things. One of which is these underground facilities and bases and whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Over time, that and then other things as well. But yeah, man, I
You know, if you type Nephilim in your phone or whatever, it capitalizes it.
it what?
It'll capitalize the N in
Yeah, let me
Nephilim.
look.
Like, why?
Let's test it out right now.
Like, how does it know that?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like, how does it know that? That's a little thing I noticed the other day. I was like, what?
Oh,
Why
look
would,
at
why?
this too. It seems like, man, often described as giants, but the Nephilim are mysterious beings mentioned in the Hebrew Bible,
Oh,
specifically in Genesis 6:4 and Numbers 13:33. They are often described as giants or as the offspring of sons of God and daughters of men. Their exact nature and origin is subject to debate. Is it really, though? But anyway,
but that gets back to what we were talking about with the intent and how these stories are being told and why they're being told this way. Because, you know, you and I, generations before us, generation now behind us, we've all been told the pitchfork, the Fu Manchu, the suit.
yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
the dude dressed in
And
red.
yo, that's not in the Bible
No.
at all. And not only is that not in the Bible, him owning hell and all that stuff that goes with it,
Don't
that's
even
not in the
send me
Bible.
down the Satan rabbit hole.
Yo, oh, I'm not because I only break. I hate to give that any energy, but
Right.
right, it's like hold on. So then why are we being told this crazy story if that's not the actual case? Because
Yeah.
wouldn't wouldn't you agree the actual understanding of Sheol is like way more scary,
Yeah.
right? Than
Yes.
that's way more absence of God is way more scary than what Hollywood tells us will happen,
Fiery pit of whatever. Right.
dude. Right? So it's kind of like now it makes sense why that's being told and why mythology is being crammed down our throats for the Department of Education is because how else can you trick us into thinking that, oh man, that's scary. That's ooh, 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 just like you read with the, might be real or whatever,
Maybe. Maybe. It's a theory.
right? And it's like that's the deception.
Yeah.
That's that, and how else, why do all the the people look different? The religion is different except for the flood. The language is way different, very complex. All the buildings look the same. And
Yeah.
it's because this group of people, for different reasons, dispersed. And because like one of Goliath's sons had 6 fingers on every hand, 6 fingers every toe, every foot. I think we talked about this on the last podcast. That's Native American folklore.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
some of his
and
people,
and allegedly we have well, somebody has the bones that go along with that.
oh yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, I've
there's
seen that.
physical actual evidence of that.
So and I saw one. I don't know. I spent a little bit of time on it, but not enough. But there was a samurai just found in 24, I think, with 6 fingers. Big, tall dude, big, long sword. And it's like that just tells me that they got out of town. They were like, this is too hot around here, and they went. You know
Everybody.
what I mean?
Yeah.
One of the judges, his because a couple of them it says some stuff and then it doesn't say a whole lot of them. Yeah. Ibsen of Bethlehem. Only thing that describes him, he had 30 sons and 30 daughters, whom he sent abroad and took in 30 daughters from abroad for his sons. And like that's it. And then he judged Israel for 7 years. You know? But
Yeah.
if you dive into him, Bethlehem was one of the conquered promised land areas. So there's a 50-50 shot that he was a bad dude. If he was, and he was sending sons and daughters abroad,
It's like a repopulation campaign
like
or
bam.
a just a, you know, expansion campaign.
Yeah. And it could be argued that he wasn't doing that to be bad because he was a judge. He was trusted to keep Israel. So in that sense, he was good, right? So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Noah had 3 sons. 2 of them did pretty good. One didn't. You know what I mean? So like he's sending that group out. There's a chance. Who knows?
This is the stuff that twists me up too about like modern DNA collection, right? And it makes me look at Neanderthal completely different. Like that's what they tell us it is. They, and I'll say the proverbial they tell us that, most populations are anywhere from, point zero whatever 4 to up to 3% Neanderthal DNA. Like even I have some, like 2.5% of my, like 2.5% of my DNA is um, Neanderthal. But what is that? Like, you know what I'm saying, dude? You
I
know where I'm
do.
going with that.
Yes.
It's what they tell us.
Yeah.
There's also the other hominids that lived on Earth with us, allegedly, right? The
Those.
Desnovans and all of them, man.
Yeah. The cavemen could be Ammonites.
It could be. Like, what does that
Yeah.
even mean, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
And that's what.
Actually, it makes more sense to think of it that way than it does the way that they portray it. Well, it's because it's the deception part.
That's what's so crazy about, and the Matrix
Yeah,
thing. That
yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing. The idea of a matrix or a simulation is to be under false pretense, right? How differs by the person inflicting. But if you boil it down, you're just under false pretenses. That's what a simulation is. I can agree that we're living under false pretenses,
Yeah.
right?
Agreed.
There's
Absolutely.
nothing. It's not Keanu Reeves. We're not, you know, making giving
We're
power to
not
engines.
batteries, right?
Yeah, but we are under false pretenses. So there's too much evidence that Federal Reserve and Department of Education and the forming of the government. There's too much evidence that it wasn't done with good intent. That for us to believe that it is, like, you know what I'm saying? Like Rothschild, anything about him, and that he financed the department. It's like okay, all right. And then you look
Yeah.
at. I was just reading about how him and Henry Ford teamed up, and the idea was not to produce thinkers, but to produce workers.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like there's no, you can't even, our whole education system is built on creating obedient workers.
Dude. And continuing and I'll say Canaanite, continuing the false religion and the false thinking, right? Because how is it 2025 and we have AI and we have Starlink, we have incredible technology, like ridiculous. We can make and do anything, but
Pretty
we don't know
much.
but we don't know anything else about the world but Egypt and Rome and Greece, and that's it. You know, the Mayans, no idea. The Olmecs, no idea.
Yeah,
Right?
dude.
Easter Island, got no idea.
Well,
But we
but
don't even.
and we actually do. Well, you have to if you're at least some semblance of education and common sense, I wouldn't say education. Education is the wrong word, but common sense makes you understand that all this stuff around the globe rhymes. It all came from the same place. Like this is right.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it
Uh-huh.
was breakaway civilizations or whatever. Or that it was all one giant civilization. Who knows, right? But if you look at them all, they all rhyme, man. And yeah. Anyway,
Well,
that's a whole nother
dude,
rabbit hole.
I know, but like, cause I'm big on like old school maps. So Magellan's map, well, his map and his scribe, his notes, all document giants from like uh Florida to like Mississippi, Alabama,
Uh-huh,
like
uh-huh.
massive giants,
Yeah.
massive
Well,
towns.
massive earthwork freaking structures too. Like,
Yes,
right? So,
yes. The Rossatio Italian map from the 1500s documents a tribe of giantesses in Australia. Captain John Smith in 1600, he documents a tribe of 600 giants in the Chesapeake Bay. And I'm going on up the coast. You got Abraham Lincoln at uh I always forget it. What's the water, the big water up there? Niagara Falls. I always
oh
forget
yeah.
that word. He, in his speech, mentions giants in
Yes.
1848. But here we are in 1900. Oh, man, that's folklore, man. You crazy. You weirdo to think that.
Yeah,
It was like,
exactly.
and this is what you made me think of with how everything just rhymes. It was like, that was the entire narrative, literally up until 1900, was that a whole bunch of big old people and weird people were walking on this world, and that's where all of these structures came from. And then
Yeah,
all
I
of a
mean,
sudden,
and almost every single Indian tribe, Native American tribe in the Americas, not just North, Central and South America, have oral traditions of giants, whether it's other tribes or even within their own ranks.
mhm, yeah. But here we are, 1900s, that whole reset, which is sounding way more appetizing to me, man. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Was now all that's craziness. You know, the buildings are different. The buildings are not as ornate as they used to be. You know, that whole Tartarian argument and
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
But
Which I just to give you something to listen to and my folks on, because this will be out. Yeah, either way. It lives in perpetuity. But John on the 21 CD podcast, I don't know if you've ever talked to him or you know who he is. He just blew my brain up a little bit, and I've only watched half the episode about debunking Tartaria. Now, that doesn't mean that certain things didn't exist or that they don't exist because they do, but it's not what we think. So that's my opinion. I've had that opinion for a while, but it's a really good podcast to go down the rabbit hole on. Just saying.
yo, I did a video on the. Did you see the Arcturus Star one, the Chicago's World Fair? Yo,
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, yes.
the
I know the story. Yes.
sure, sure. So to start, the motto of the 1933 Chicago World's Fair was "Science finds, industry applies, man conforms." That was
Wow.
the
Man
motto,
conforms.
dog. That was the whole thing. Now, the Arcturus star is in Job 38. And it's when it's a everyone please read Job, if not just Job 38. If you want to know how the world was made and how things actually exist, read Job 38. It's all in there, literally. But he mentions the Arcturus, in King James, it's Arcturus star and its children. In Orthodox Jewish, it's the bear and its Bantam, which Bantam is children.
Yeah.
And that's where the bear, the zodiac, and all that stuff comes from. So the children, Arcturus star has 54 stars in its constellation, so that's the children thing. But when I was researching that, I noticed that in the 1933 Chicago World's Fair, they used free energy from the Arcturus star. They had 4 observatories in the United States, harnessed at the same time when it passed over, and that's how they lit the first night at the Chicago World's Fair.
Which, yeah. But this is stuff like we've got, but there's so much that we can't even cover, man.
Mm-hmm. And the 1893, that's what started the World's Fair thing, the Tartarian and all that
Yes,
stuff.
yes.
It was in remembrance, it was the World's Columbian Festival
Right.
in remembrance of Christopher Columbus. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. I don't buy the, if you look at all the statue that they had and all the, I don't buy it because we've got
What
Washington
year was
D.C.
that?
1893, because like the C in District of Columbia, that's supposed to be Christopher Columbus.
Yeah.
I don't buy that. You really? Because Columbus is like super hated on, like super hated on.
Now, for sure.
But you're telling me that we liked him so much that we're gonna call it District of Columbia. We're gonna have World Columbia Fest. No, 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 no. So, anyways, but the that was the basis of that, and that's why they used Arcturus star, because in 1893 they were somehow tracking it, and they knew in 40 years it would be passing over at this time. And all of the memorabilia, all the pamphlets, all the brochures that were given out literally talk about that. I think I have, yes. So this is one of the main pamphlets that was given out. An exposition brought forth in a time of doubt and hesitation by the gallantry of the American spirit, enlightened through the genius of man by the rays of Arcturus, and that I there derived instruction, entertainment, and the sense of wonder. So, um, up until 1900, we knew that it was really crazy and medieval and giants. But then in 1900, we got science telling us that you got to do this and this. And we got all this memorabilia talking about instructions and conforming. And now we don't know what really happened. No, nah. It's too much evidence, man. It's too much evidence that, right? Like that's
Yeah,
with my
agreed.
research, dude. If you find something crazy, you know it's crazy because you can find another piece to it, right? Like the
Yeah.
Gibeonites and them being water carriers, and then Solomon's molten sea. So it lines up because there's pieces.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, this we we go down that rabbit hole too. This is just too much behind that alone.
Yeah,
You
we
know what
just,
I
man, it's so hard to focus.
mean?
Right? I mean, because literally,
Mhm.
um, it's like this is why Gary Wayne is such an anomaly, right? Because but if you watch his interviews, he can't even he's trying to contain tries to contain it all and he just can't because there's so much evidence whether or not it's circumstantial or not that will just make it blows everything to smithereens. And it's like I think it's done this way on purpose is because it's completely overwhelming and people will be like, they'll shut down. They just shut down and they're like, well, all right, I'm going back to my, cozy little Netflix on the couch and, I'll make dinner for my family and I'm going to go to work, you know, with the blinders on and focus, right? Because they can't realize or they won't. People look at me like I have four heads most of the time, but I don't care anymore. Too old. I'm
Mhm.
too I'm too deep into this, man, that I I can't go back. And dude,
Well, it's yeah, I mean, you preaching to the choir. Like the research, I mean, and there wasn't a lot of just purebred humans in these biblical stories.
and I don't think there is now. And this is what I'm trying to say. This is why I have issues. once I start digging into the seed war part of it all
Mm-hmm.
too, it's like, what do you mean a seed war? If we all have
Yes.
other blood in us, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. You know
It's
what
like
I'm
we were talking
saying,
about
dude. I
our,
can't,
yeah.
that's a whole nother road though. That's like 15 episodes.
Mm-hmm. It's like we were talking about earlier on just because you're Nephilim, are you damned?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that simple. At least that, and that's the way it's looking to me.
No,
It's
because if
just
we
not.
talk about the RH negative stuff, which a lot of folks in our wheelhouse are saying is Nephilim blood. That's what they're saying. That's what I understand, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
If that's
I've
the
heard that
case,
too.
then they're all damned, right? In
It,
theory.
that would be the consensus, right? Because that, and that's again, that's such a narrow window, and it's on purpose, really, because like, and I hate to, because there's always exceptions to every rule. So I hate to say one thing. It's just as me as a human, but um, how can you make it more scary? How can you demand more respect by like, well, no, oh no, this was, but then you go down through these stories and it was like, no, it was just some big people. And
This
what
is
you
why
do,
I can't take a lot of it. You can't allow it to curb, and this is part of the great deception as we see it as a larger thing, is you're hitting the nail on the head. So much of this is done on purpose to just confuse, right? Because we're dumb humans, we don't understand a damn thing, right?
Mhm.
And we don't understand, we don't know anything. That's like my process, and that's my motto. I don't know anything. But with that being said, you can't close yourself off to everything. You have to be open to everything, and then allow discernment to take hold. And where does discernment come from?
Absolutely.
So there's so many things that I pray on a constant basis. Like, show me, give me. I don't need the knowledge, but I need to know if I'm going in. And I just had chills just thinking about it, because the search of knowledge is dangerous in itself,
Hmm.
right? Because you're basically, what am I supposed to know and what am I not, right? So I kind of let and I'll say it, I kind of let the Holy Spirit guide me, right?
Hmm.
Because that's the point. And wow,
Good.
I wish you could see it,
Yes.
but
Amen.
I let
God is
it,
good.
because too many people get dogmatic, no pun intended, get dogmatic about it, and what they believe and what they don't. Because
What
opinions
I
are like assholes, right? Everyone's got one, and usually they stink. My opinion is you have to be open to all this.
what
You
I've been
have to.
doing, what I've been doing lately, because um again, this is my entire life. That's where God's put me. And
Yes.
my wife is so awesome.
I
She
love
is
it. You're
so,
like, he's got a plan for me and it's going somewhere.
yeah. Oh yeah. Whatever you need, homie. I'm down.
Yeah,
So
your wife is awesome.
yeah, and she is like such a big cheerleader because she knows me. I'm Captain Humble. I'm nobody. And she's like, yeah, well, you are. Talk about your book. Like push, push, push.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's been some times where like, see some friends or some family members or, people she works with, or just random people. And it's like, oh, so tell me about what you're doing. And I got a choice. I got a choice to be like, hey, God, church,
Yeah, I
ah,
do. I do know.
right? But that's not me. That's not the lane that I'm in. That's not what he wants from me. So I hit him crazy. And I'm just straight up, just like the other day I was talking to some people I hadn't seen them in a while, and they were like, so, fill us in. What you got going on with this thing? And I was like, hey, can you wrap your mind around the fact that giants and lion men and other hybrids were just cruising around the world? It was like first thing I said,
And probably
you
still are.
know, yo. And it
Yeah.
was like, yeah, that's a great opener. So then I started kind of try to make things make sense and in a non preachy way. Because again, that's not, you got to play your roles. But I was just breaking it down like scientifically, right? Like this thing happened. And then as I'm talking, dude's like, yo, I just watched a documentary the other night about that, in Egypt or wherever. I'm like, yes. And what really got him, which was super awesome, and this was totally, from God, was all the other religions and everyone else, like their stories really wild how things happen, right? It was took this and it killed this and it pulled this and it ate this. It's all real wild stories. And that's what we were kind
It's
of
all
laughing about.
wild.
Dude, so I said, well, the lion men in the Bible comes from incest. So I said, and dude was like, yo, I didn't pull no crazy stuff out of a hat.
Right.
Just
Yes.
literally, that's what happened. And that was such an awesome conversation because it opened their eyes to God in a different way. And that's what this thing's about, is like, you know, the deception. We keep going back to that. And the bad stuff in this world is telling us it was God's fault. God wanted everybody to die. God did this and God did that. It was like, okay, all right, all right, all right, all right. First, you're the ones telling us that story. So we know that's not the true story. But then why was
Right.
he calling you for you to, technically he only called for the Amalekites to die. Everyone else just had to get rid out of the promised land because they were
Yeah,
tearing it up.
they had to get pushed out.
Yeah. He didn't say they had to die, and they are actually, lots of them were able to stay over. And then, like we talked about earlier, lots of them were part of the temple. But it was the Amalekites had to go. And the reason the Amalekites had to go is if you look at the book of Esther, and Haman is an Agagite, and he's trying to kill all the Jews. In Orthodox Jewish, the first time they mention him, it's in Numbers 24:7, where it goes back to, and during the conquest of the Promised Land, where it specifies Amalek was one of the first nations, and King Agag was one of the first and nasty and bad kings. And it said that God will show everyone in the land that he is over Agag. So going back to like what the Nephilim were actually doing, that they were appointing a king, setting up their own governments and nations, taxing the crap out of their people,
Yep.
stifling them into, this is how you live.
Yeah.
This is what you're going to do for us. I mean, every politician is like filthy rich. That's disgusting. That's horrible. That is so foul and
Yeah.
perverse.
And like most
Well,
of them, they don't go into office rich, but they sure come out rich. So
dude,
what does that say?
and that's been happening since day one.
Yes.
Day one, we're responsible for 10% and our firstborn. That's and give your heart, right? Those are
Yeah.
the, what does the government expect from us? Our
More than
entire life.
10%.
Yo. So, right? And so that's like you
Or
boil down those
how
stories.
about they give, yeah, anyway, I'm not going to go down there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Bait
I
me
just
into it.
it just gets it again. It's all, folks, if you take anything from this episode, you got to understand that so much of this is a deception. It just is. Period.
You
Period.
live 65 years, 67 years, and you get a sliver. But then you'll hear politicians have the audacity to say that they want to extend that. Well, people are living longer now. Well, we should get more out of them. Like, man,
Are they though? Are they though? I'm actually part of the generation that we're the first generation that allegedly won't outlive our parents.
I know I'm hearing all that stuff, dude.
So what are you saying to me? Yeah.
And and
Well, it
and
basically states that you poison me to death.
and there's no
So
way that that statement can be used in a positive way.
none.
It's like
Zero.
well, I mean, I'm not going to be, say I live to be 100, hypothetically, for this example. Well, my last couple of years are not going to be great. So why would I have to be, you know, punching a clock?
Yeah. Right.
Because there's no positivity behind that.
Yeah.
And this is from day one. That's how That's why they were. Think about this. When Israelites left Egypt, it was 20,000 people. Why didn't Egypt fall? Why didn't Egypt crumble then? Like, that's 20,000. They lost 20,000 slaves. Egypt kept going because that was
Actually got stronger.
that was a drop in the bucket to what they were doing to people.
Allegedly got stronger.
Allegedly.
Let me put it there.
Right? So, like, it's right there, man. It's been happening day one. That's how, like, that Anunnaki thing. Yeah, yeah, that did happen. They weren't gods, obviously. All these people have been telling it the same story, but yeah.
Yeah. I look at it as, and this is, if you break it down, just baseline should be just knowledge, right? At this point, every pantheon of every civilization's religion, right, are all little g gods. They're all fallen angels, period. Or as I like how, I love how Gary Wayne puts it. Finally, I got Gary on my show, by the way. He's coming on later this summer.
Nice.
But I love how he calls them celestial mafia godfathers. Because it's very, very, and now they're all in the pit, right? But yeah. Anyway, dude, I could go on and talk about this stuff for ever.
I know that whole Gilgamesh and Hillary Clinton thing, where it says that they were trying to
resurrection
find
chamber.
Yes, and it says the buried Nephilim, but in Revelation 9 it talks about, and we talked about that last time, was the buried Nephilim. Says it. So it's like, well, yeah, there's your evidence there.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Who are the angels that are in the Euphrates? Do you know anything about that?
That's them.
Yes.
It doesn't say who they are, but it says that they are buried in the Euphrates.
Yes.
I think it's four of them.
4 of them.
And it's in its most translations say buried angel. One translation says buried demon, as in a fallen angel. And then I forget the other one because I haven't read it in a while.
See, this is the thing that drives me nuts is we don't have accurate translations of these things, right? And that's part of the deception, because certain things mean certain things, but then you dig deep and you're like, wait, actually, it doesn't mean that at all. Like the fact that we call Satan is such a deception. It's not real. It is not the name of our enemy, period. It's just not. Neither is Lucifer. It's not a name. It's not the name of our enemy. It's a job title, effectively.
Yeah.
This is what we're given. Right. This is why I like, because again, I'll bring up John from 21 CD. He thinks that Sam Yaza is actually the leader of, he's our enemy. That's what he thinks. But again, I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all bizarre, dude. But it's definitely interesting. It can be interesting if you want to open that book, or open that, anything, whatever you want to call it, that bag, that hole, that. Oh, dude. Yeah. Go down another rabbit hole. We still have a little time.
All right. So David starts. So he kills Goliath, and then he wins favor from Saul. And then Saul gives him charge of 1,000-man army. David starts kicking butt. Saul can't handle it. Saul tries to kill David. That's when he ran. First place he goes to is Nob. He goes to Ahimelech the Hittite. Hittite is a giant, straight up. He goes to Ahimelech and says, I need a weapon. I need help. Can you help me out? He gives him Goliath's sword. All I got is Goliath's sword. So he gets this monster sword. And that's when Dog the Edomite pops up. Saul shows up with his bodyguard trying to find David. And they're in Nob and can't find him. They find out Ahimelech helped him. It's like, you're supposed to be bad, right? You're Nephilim blood. You're supposed to help us. Can't handle it, kills the entire town, decimates the entire town. So David's on the run. He goes to Gath, has a bad time. He doesn't stay very long. He bounces, goes to Moab, and then starts forming raiding parties in Moab. And that's when he's accruing a bunch of these lion men. And
Yeah.
he's going after the Amorites, Amalekites, and all that stuff. He goes to Gath and is given Ziklag, the area of Ziklag. And that's when he gets his 30 men from Ziklag. They sign up with him. 11 of them are lying. It says it. Let me read it because it's better if I read it than to put it into my words. And of the Gadites, there separated themselves unto David into the hold to the wilderness men of might. What that means is they separated themselves from the wilderness, meaning that they were wild people, wilderness dwellers, and they got rid of that, left their tribe, and joined up with David. Men of might, men of war, fit for battle. They could handle the shield and buckler, whose faces were the faces of lions,
It
swift as
doesn't get
roes
any.
upon the mountains. So here he is in Ziklag, and then he gets Ismaiah the Gibeonite, and he is a mighty man among the 30. So it's really cool in David's mighty men how there's a competition of who's better, who's more tough.
Right.
And there's also we talked about mistranslations. There's a really good one from the first uh, David's Mighty Men list, and then the one in Chronicles. So in Samuel, in his first, in Second Samuel, it says these are the name of David's Gibberim, and in Hebrew it says Yishevoth Bashevet Tachemine, same as Adino the Etzni, and then it lists two other guys. So it says the top three, but then it says that Yishevoth thing. In Chronicles, it got mistranslated, and it says the first mighty man, first of his top three, was Jashabeth the Tachemite. But when they keep going, it becomes four people, right? Because they him, Adino, Eleazar, and Shamama. That's four people. You just said three. So what it actually says, and it took me a while to figure this out, but Yishaveth means to dwell, as in sitting. Because when you're in a chair, you're dwelling in that chair. You're no longer there. Bashavet in King James is translated as um, to sit in the seat. And then Tachemine is wisdom. So basically, what it's saying is these are the names of David's Gibberim. He who dwelleth in the seat of wisdom, the same as Adino the Etzni. So it's saying that David, among all of these Gibberim, all of these bad dudes, he was the top, dwelleth in the seat of wisdom. And in Adino Etzni, Etz means tree. So Adino the Etzni, Eleazar and I think we talked about those guys. Eleazar the Achochi is a howling beast, and then Shamama the Herite is a mountain dweller. Now, what's crazy? Remember we talked about the sons of Zariah. Joab is David's head commander, but then Abiashi, Joab's brother, is in charge of the top three of David's mighty men. So it's just these nasty, brutal dudes. And in his royal council, David had a man named Adoriam, which means Lord of Height, and he was over the tributaries. So when they were conquering giant lands and lion men and all that, Adoriam, the Lord of Height, was in charge of those guys. And then, yo, dude, it just you keep going, you break these down. Oh, this is a really cool one. He had two Netophonites. And Nehemiah, the Netophonites are mentioned three times. Two times as being singers, and then the third time is that's where the singers come from. Nephina supplies the singers, but they were also Gibborim. And David's, I call him the Dirty 30 from Ziklag.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
had, yeah,
The
he had,
dirty 30.
yes, he had sons of Korah. He had Korites, but the sons of Korah wrote 5 psalms. Excuse me, and they were all battle psalms. Psalms 45, yes. So Psalms 45:3 literally says, gird thy sword, O Gibor. So he had gigantic singers, and some of them actually got to write battle songs, and it made it into the Bible.
Dude.
So,
But you go along with that too, along with other things that were happening with the horn and things like that. It just shows you that acoustics again come into play, right?
well, think about what we were talking about Gideon.
Yeah,
Gideon is a Gibor HaShavel,
right.
and
My
they
nephew's named after Gideon, by the way.
tight.
So
You ought to
sidetrack.
tell them.
Yeah,
So, and they're the ones that circled the Jericho,
yeah.
and then on the 7th time they blew the horn. Well, doesn't that so man, and this is something that we talked about beforehand, and I've been talking like crazy, 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 but when you put the supernatural into these stories, doesn't it make more sense?
Oh God, it makes all the sense then.
Like, yo,
It's the whole nother thing, and this is why I get so frustrated with modern day Christianity is because they
mhm,
don't teach that. They
dude.
don't teach the supernatural side of it. Very few folks have ministry that teaches the supernatural side of this.
So you telling me the giants blew horns and then the walls fell down? Humans doing that, that is an awesome story.
Yeah,
But when you get the real context of it, it's so much more incredible of a story.
yeah, dude. It's yeah, makes me weary. I mean, in a good way, but you know what I mean. Oh,
Mhm.
dude. Yeah, we just gotta. I feel like we need to keep having episodes. I feel like we need to put together a whole series of something here.
I'm down, dude. I like
We'll talk about
literally,
it.
yeah. Cause what I do, I just take now where I'm at, I'm so vested. I just take sections and just dive into it. I'm like, oh, well, let me do this. Let me do that. Cause I did
Yeah,
like David's wives. David's wives, dude, all come from Hebron, which is formerly Kirith Arba. Arba, the father of the Anak giants. And then, um, specifically, one of his sons is named a goodly man. And we know goodly from Saul being shoulders and head taller than everybody.
yeah,
And Benaiah, one of David's mighty men, kills a goodly Egyptian. And certain translations may put that as a giant Egyptian.
yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
we can go down that road because David, right off the Bathsheba and Abigail. Now, Bathsheba is a Hittite, and Uriah the Hittite was one of his Gebarim, and then he's in the story of where he hooked up with Bathsheba, and they send Uriah to the front lines. Was she a giant? And then Abigail was the wife of Nabal. Nabal was a Ishgadal, a man of great size. He dies, and David marries her and has children. Was she a giant? So,
Or at least part giant.
dude, so like again, these stories, man, when you put in these extra details, it paints so much different of a picture.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I've been saying this for about a year. We need to get Peter Jackson and make him a born again. I don't know his religious affiliation, but we need to get him born again, and then in depth in the Bible, because he needs to make it. I don't know. It'd be like a 10-part thing. No, the problem is there's nobody that would pay for it. But could you imagine it done like the Bible told in like Lord of the Rings style?
Mhm. That's what I tried to do with the King's Highway it was, granted, it was 3-minute short film, but
But yes, we can't. We don't have the facilities or the faculties really to do this, nor the money, nor the
yeah.
whatever. But those are those things. It's like using that technology to tell the story the way that it should be told.
Mhm.
And
And
yeah,
that goes back to the Great Deception thing, because think about the Russell Crowe Noah movie,
yeah, oh yeah,
dude. What an awesome opportunity, and what a failure. It was a good movie, so don't take the failure
no,
wrong.
right.
It was a
At
super
face
awesome movie.
value, it was a great movie.
Yes. But they got the biggest part of it wrong, and it was on purpose. They went with the Gnostic view, the Sethite, and then Tubal-Cain surviving and blah, 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 blah. What an awesome opportunity that you missed. But it was on purpose, because dude, you can't, because they're the ones. Like, that's the deep state, is the Nephilim. So they can't actually, that's why I personally have a problem with all, like, religious content put out in movies, is because it's never to the point, and it's on purpose, and I hate that, because and that's another rabbit hole of, like, non-canonical. It has to be one standard. This is what happened. You know what I mean? It can't be, yeah, well, really it was this guy, and it was this, but everything. No, what really happened? If this was real estate, what's my border? You know, plain
Yeah,
and
yeah,
simple. And that's what I'm trying with my research, is trying to set the standard of what the actual occurrence was. What did it look like? What's the truth behind this thing? As far as we can get. And it's what I'm uncovering, dude. It was just like, it happened. Human genealogy changed, but you know what I mean? It's like, what was this? And who
right.
were the people, and what were they doing? And again, we talked about it, but Shamash and Baal, and their motivation, what they were making people do back in the day.
Yeah, and people worshipped him
Well,
to an extent. But you know what
and
I'm saying.
yes, and that's so crazy too, because how, man? How did, like, they tricked,
Well,
right?
part of it is what part of this whole thread that's been going on this whole episode is fear.
Uh-huh.
And they rule by fear. Like uh, they do.
Yeah. Like,
They
you want it
the
to rain,
proverbial they
you
rule
want
by fear.
you want crops. All right, well, you gotta pass your child through the flame. And it's like, well, is there any other way? No, no.
Yeah.
It's like, well, who invited this guy? Like, why is that all you can come up with? And if you think about First Kings and Second Kings, and how Israel was doing good and they were doing bad, and they were doing kind of good and then they were kind of bad, and it was just roller coaster. The point is, the population was growing by thousands and thousands of percent. And the point with Noah is, it only takes 3 generations to forget God. And that's why family is so important, is because these are how stories are passed. So that's kind of what was happening, right? Was like it was getting changed and manipulated, and boom, here we are thinking this or thinking that.
Yeah. Bro. Oh man. Well, I think we got to wrap it up. At least for this episode. So tell everybody, I mean, dude, every time, thank you for coming on. Um,
Appreciate
we'll
it.
get something organized here. So it's
Let's
not
do it,
so
man.
like we're running around with a shotgun instead of
I'm down,
need
man.
to we need to pull the rifles out. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? Or the
Mm-hmm.
bows so we
Mm-hmm.
can get organized, at least in the that's how my brain works.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell everybody again where they can find you and buy your stuff. Do some shameless product placement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. YouTube, Adam Farris. I got some really good videos. eadamfarris.substack.com is my writings. I try to keep everything, I would do it the way I would do it. So it's not like super verse and not really, really long, because I'm not going to be
Yeah,
able to pay
it's
attention to that.
definitely digestible in your Substack. It's all digestible snippets.
Exactly.
You just can't read too many of them at one time because
You go
Your
crazy.
your
Yeah,
your mind will melt a little. So
I can't pay attention that long, so that's how I do things. It's just like to the point. This is what happened.
yeah.
Um, fivestones.bigcartel.com is my book, and Instagram. I'm on Instagram. You know, I do a bunch of crazy stuff on there too. Super accessible. I love this stuff. You got questions, comments, concerns? Holler at me.
Also, you have a new book coming out too soon, right?
Yes,
Ish,
Great Fish.
soonish.
Yes, which is right behind me. These first 3 pages. Really esoteric look at Jonah. Really, um, you got to feel him sinking. The point of that story is to go down, 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 down. So I
Yep.
want to visually, like, I want you to feel suffocation. We're shooting for the end of the year. It might be the first year. You know how things go, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, working on that too. Got a bunch of forks
And
in the fire.
it's not a whale, everyone.
It is not. Absolutely not a whale. It is not a whale.
That's all we're gonna say. It's not a whale.
That's it.
So yeah, man. Again, pleasure as always. And we'll have you on again here really soon.
Yeah, let's do it, man. It's fun. It's always fun coming on here, dude.
Absolutely.
He who controls the mind controls the war. But first, he must silence the noise.
Hey, yo. Straight from the catacombs where the scrolls was hidden, where monks chant verses and the watchman's risen. Broadcasting seeds, son, it ain't just a show. It's a frequency shift from the realm below. Yo. Encrypted speech from the outer courts with a bloodline of kings and celestial reports. Got Nephilim tech in a backpack word, while these reptile suits try to censor the word. Yo, I step through portals with the mic as my torch, dropping sermons so raw they send drones to the porch. They surveil what I spit, can't silence the flame. Got angels in camo with encrypted names. We talking black ops and black robes, fallen stars with zip codes, temple scrolls and time codes, beasts with 10 horns in stealth mode. From Mount Hermon to the Grand Canyon vaults, where the Smithsonian buries humanity's faults. But we dig with the pen, slice lies with the flow, like Elijah on the mountain when the fire hit the show. Yo, this is spiritual warfare in stereo, holy scripts flipping through the technicolor burial. No fiction, just friction between realms, dropping bars like prophecy with angelic helm. So when you tune in, just know what it is. It's ancient war drums, not a podcast for kids. It's the Watchtower gospel, wrapped in grit, broadcasting seeds. We the last ones legit. Straight truth, no fluoride filter. Ghost in the wise with the soul of a builder. Welcome to the front lines, the kingdom cries out. So grab your armor, your mic, and cast the doubt out.
I want to sweat your homes, the detecting species sitting as prisoners. It's water, wicked, tired trips.